Director Murphy, you just want to say a word or two, or would you prefer that I do? Okay. Essentially, it's Saturday on October 26th. It's at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and all the police stations on the Cape are welcoming people to come and bring their unused medications, syringes, and so on. And it's just to keep the idea afloat and people aware of it, but the fact is all the police stations are open all the time for people to bring back these medications that are unused. And it's kind of important in, I guess, several ways. I think it's unsafe to just have unused medications around in households. Sometimes people have kids running around. There are people who shouldn't be taking medication, taking someone else's medication. Medications expire. Some people put medications, pills down the toilet, and that goes into our drinking water eventually. So a lot of reasons why it'd be nice for people to get rid of the pills. And so they're just making a special day, and that's in each town. That's what we're doing. Is there anything else that the public needs to know? It's great. We've been doing it. We were one of the first ones on the Cape to do it.
Right.
There's a box, no questions asked. You walk in the lobby, you open the thing, put it in. No one needs to know anything. Okay, just you put the stuff in. So it's set up really very well. The one in town here is 24/7.
At the police station?
Front door's open. Just go, put it in, and you leave. Okay, moving along. The third item is a hearing, and this is redevelopment Yarmouth Gardens Motor Lodge, and it's located at 497 Route 28 in West Yarmouth. And this has to do with a septic variance. And I understand there'll be people somewhere coming up here and to present this to the board. Just so.
Do you want the green cards first? Yeah, you can just leave them on.
Okay.
Just so you're aware, obviously we're televised. It's probably not national, but it's if you just introduce yourselves for the record, your names, and thank you for coming in, gentlemen.
Sure. I'm David McNevich with Coastal Engineering Company here this evening.
Welcome.
And I'm Jim Perrine with Commonwealth Community Developers. We're the developer of the site. This is, as you know, the Yarmouth Gardens Motor Inn, where the town's Affordable Housing Trust has an option on the property and selected a developer, and we were selected, and our plan is to demolish the existing buildings and to construct 40 affordable apartments on the site.
Okay.
So we're here for the regulation that requires if you're discharging more than 2,000 gallons per day, that would come before the board and have certain requirements. And we're asking for a variance from the requirement that we meet a 5 part per million nitrogen limit at the down gradient property line for this development. This is, as Jim said, is presently developed. In the letter that we submitted, the design flow for the development that is there now is 5,680 gallons per day. The septic systems that serve that facility are mostly cesspools, but there is a Title V sewage disposal system that was put in the year 2000 or 2001, based on the soil testing that we've done at the site for the design of this septic system that we're proposing. The Title V system that exists there now is approximately 3 feet above estimated high groundwater, and that's a very shallow type system. And we believe that the cesspools are, if they're not right at groundwater or very close to groundwater, they may in fact be in groundwater. So what is proposed for construction is 40 units of affordable rental housing in 2 buildings. and with a total of 72 bedrooms. And so that would have a Title V design flow of 7,920 gallons per day. So it is an increase in design flow for the property. But we are proposing that a secondary treatment system would be provided as part of the sewage disposal system to provide a cleaner effluent than a conventional Title V sewage disposal system. And we did look at what the impact of that would be. We found that the existing motel development has a calculated site nitrogen concentration of about 20.72 milligrams per liter, and an annual sewage nitrogen load of about 605.5 pounds per year. And the proposed development, the site nitrogen concentration would be reduced to 12.4 milligrams per liter, and the annual sewage nitrogen load would be reduced to 458.3 pounds. So that represents just over a 40% reduction in site nitrogen concentration and a load reduction, sewage nitrogen load reduction of about 24.3% over what exists now. So it's definitely a substantial environmental and health improvement. The sewage disposal system is designed to comply with the required groundwater separation of 5 feet above the estimated high groundwater for the site, so we'll be providing proper separation where that does not exist today. We'd be substantially reducing the nitrogen loading for the property over what exists there. And then just by way of going through approvals with the planning board, and we went to zoning as well, they are requiring that the future sewer connection be constructed as part of the project. So it's not just shown as someday in the future they will connect. It has to be constructed out to Route 28 so that when the sewer is available in Route 28, that the property can be connected without really further construction. And I think based on what I saw, at least the latest, and if anyone knows otherwise, I believe that the plan is that the municipal sewer will be available somewhere around 2025, I think is what I saw on the most recent information that's on the town website. Based on construction of this project, I think Jim believes that the property, the units will not be ready for occupancy until probably at least late spring 2021, maybe a little later than that, maybe late spring to fall 2021. So this really is will be a temporary on-site sewage disposal system until the municipal sewer is available. And so we're proposing a treatment system that'll treat or reduce the effluent, nitrogen in the effluent to 19 milligrams per liter, where a conventional Title V system discharges at about 35 milligrams per liter. So that's why, even though there's an increase in flow, there's an overall substantial reduction in the nitrogen at the site. So this is already a substantial cost to the sewage disposal system, and to get to a system, install a system that would treat the wastewater down to, we back calculated in, to reach the 5 milligram per liter mass balance approach, we'd have to treat the wastewater to 7 parts per million in the discharge, which is even, I mean, that's you'd need a pretty robust wastewater treatment system. That's what wastewater treatment plants, full-blown wastewater treatment plants that are installed under a groundwater discharge permit have to meet a 10 part per million discharge limit for the state. This would exceed that and have to get it down to 7. We looked at that, and based on our experience with other facilities, we feel that that would be an add of almost $750,000 to the on top of what is already being spent on the septic system that is being proposed. And then to do that, you would need to have an operator to assure that you're hitting that 7. You would have to have an operator there 5 days a week. It would be operated as a groundwater discharge project, and it would be about $75,000 a year in operation and maintenance cost to have an operator there 5 days a week. Chemicals and testing, et cetera. So we think, whereas this is an affordable, 100% affordable rental housing project, we're asking for relief that would be a financial burden and hardship that really the project cannot sustain. And we would ask, therefore, for relief for all of these reasons, ask for the board to grant relief as requested.
You're mentioning certain requirements for larger output, gallons-wise. In other words, first, in town, there must be a number of businesses that are putting out more than 2,000 gallons, right?
Correct.
So what happens to all those locations? They don't all have major treatment plants.
No, most of them are all existing.
Right.
This is because it's a redevelopment. We have not, the board has not seen many redevelopment, or we haven't really seen much redevelopment in town.
Right.
I think the last one we had was the Simpkins Complex.
Yes.
And the Cavalier. I think they were the last two as they're being redeveloped. That's when they're coming to us.
Yeah.
Let me just ask a couple follow-up points to their presentation.
Sure, this is complex. So if you
Yeah,
could-
Dave, just on your presentation, as you're looking at our regulations for what's required for the 2,000 gallons per day, where you have to meet our concerns, we're not in the drinking water area, so we're just looking at meeting the surface water discharge criteria under page 1 of our regulations under procedure.
Yes.
So where it says that, because it looks like we're probably in the Lewis Bay estuary.
Based on what I looked at, it
Yeah.
was Lewis Bay.
So that's saying that we need to get down, or the recommendation is to get down to 0.05 phosphorus and then 0.75 nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to just say how you're close to meeting those?
Just one second, before you answer the question, are we talking
Yep.
about the property line, or are we talking about in Lewis Bay, or?
Property line.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't read it that we had to meet those limits at the property line. I mean, many years ago, we did the study for Stop and Shop back in the 90s, and I think we were looking at, particularly for the impacts to Lewis Bay or whatever the receiving water body is, it's what's the concentration at the water body. And I just have to go back and refresh my memory as to the distances we cited.
They were all like 0.7 miles or something, as I recall.
Yeah, it's about it's almost 3/4 of a mile
Yeah.
to the northeast of Lewis Bay. So we will, the aquifer thickness, we're going to have a substantial dilution over that distance. the plume, if you will, from the sewage disposal system will be mixing with the groundwater. It's an unconfined aquifer. You know, we typically look at, say, at that distance, a 20-foot, at least a 20-foot aquifer thickness of the mixing. So that is very substantial. We would anticipate that we would be able to meet, this project would, I think, be able to hit those concentrations at that distance. We haven't done a detailed hydrogeologic evaluation as such. But again, with the mixing and the
Can that
length.
calculation be done without doing a full hydrological study, just looking at?
We could make some assumptions, certainly, on that.
What you would
And,
meet at the down gradient property line, and then what you would meet at down gradient Lewis Bay?
well, yeah, I think we've done what we're doing at the property line. Those are that concentration that we're indicating now, which is the 12 point. That would be equivalent to the down gradient property line, 12.4 milligrams per liter.
Right.
And then
Of nitrogen.
of nitrogen. And phosphorus, I know, again, the projects that I've been involved with, phosphorus is typically more applicable to a freshwater wetland. We look at what's the 300-foot travel distance before it's absorbed to the, adheres to the particles. So we're well beyond that. So I don't think phosphorus is an issue at all, particularly
I would
because because it's also Lewis Bay, tidal water, saltwater body. But then the nitrogen is the dilution factor.
Right, so would you get down to 0.75 parts per million, you think, on that travel distance?
I think on that distance,
No,
and
doing a full
I would
study.
think that's, again, based on some other projects we've done for wastewater treatment plants and again, sandy soils, it's going to be a long travel time to the bay in addition, right? It's going to be probably over 2 years easily.
Based on a groundwater flow of
Well, I mean, kind of,
approximate?
I couldn't, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I don't recall. I'm just thinking of another project that we did. We just got the groundwater discharge permit from Mass DEP, and we were significantly closer than 3/4 of a mile to some public water supply wells, and it was a groundwater, a hydro evaluation that we did was closer to 4 years, I believe, of travel time to some down gradient public water supply wells. So
Is that based on 5, 10 feet per year, or?
I don't remember, off the top of my head, but I just know that the distance to those wells was significantly less than 3/4 of a mile.
But we don't know what it's traveling through.
We know it's traveling through sand in both instances, in both this other project I'm referring to and this project. I mean, here, it's the glacial outwash. We're on the sandy side of the Cape. And likewise, at this other project, we're actually sort of right on the moraine, but again, it's all sandy material on that other project. So my opinion would be that we'll be below that concentration, but if the board or Bruce, if you so wanted, we could sort of do some rough calculations on that, making some logical assumptions on travel time and I guess that's really it, the gradient and travel time, but.
Without doing a full-blown hydrological report, I think just
I think
looking
we
at some
could make-
general numbers to see where you would be at the,
Yeah, we could
At the
make
Lewis
some,
Bay.
we could make some reasonable assumptions and come up with some numbers.
Because I understand, you are reducing the septic flow on the property now if it was full use. I think your calculations of the 7,920 was what the property has now, and you're going to be reducing that by 40% when you put the microfast system in?
No, that 40% reduction is the existing motel lodge.
Yes.
Has a design flow of 5,680 gallons a day. And the
Oh, that's right, that's
proposed
right.
development has a design flow of 7,920
Right, that's what I meant.
gallons a day. So it's an increase in flow, but whereas the existing facility discharges to the ground at 35 milligrams per liter, we would be discharging at 19 milligrams per liter. So even though the flow is higher, the nitrogen load is 40%. Of the concentration's 40% less. The overall nitrogen load is about 24% less than what exists there now.
How's the math done that you come up with, convert flow to the milligrams per milliliter concentrations for nitrogen? In other words, at 5,600 gallons, that converts presently to 20.7 milligrams per liter in the nitrogen concentration. How is that done?
Well, we follow the Cape Cod Commission technical bulletin for computing nitrogen concentration for a site, and it's really based on not only just wastewater, not sewage alone. It's based on all of the sources of nitrogen that are contributing nitrogen to the groundwater at that location. So the sewerage is the biggest.
Right.
It always is. But the other sources are nitrogen in runoff. And so there's nitrogen in your roof runoff, which the Cape Cod Commission factor is 0.75 milligrams per liter of roof. There's 0.75 milligrams per liter of nitrogen in roof runoff, but then you're parking in sidewalks because they're more susceptible to animals and those sorts of things. It's 1.5 milligrams per liter, so it's double the nitrogen in roof runoff. And then fertilizer, lawn fertilizer. So those are all your sources of nitrogen.
Okay.
And then you dilute it with really your sources of dilution, rainfall, infiltration into the ground, and the water that's carrying the sanitary sewage. That is you have nitrogen in sewage and you have water that's carrying that. So that's your dilution. So you divide all of your pounds of nitrogen,
Yes.
divided by all of the liters or cubic feet or whatever of your water, and you come up with a concentration, and that's how we got to the 20.7. We're using Cape Cod Commission factors for nitrogen and Cape Cod Commission factors for dilution. They say for Yarmouth, I believe it's 18 inches per year. That varies across the Cape. Up near the canal, it's 21 inches per year off of green areas, non-hardscape areas. Out at Chatham, it's only 16 inches per year of infiltration. So these are factors that come from the Cape Cod Commission, and that's what we use in producing these calculations for both the existing condition and the proposed condition.
Okay, so the roof, the parking lots, whatever, and fertilizer are consistent then? In other words, they would stay the same, basically, for this current location, and however it'll change in the future? I mean, are those,
Well,
the rain,
just
let's
like
assume the rain is the same, so,
the dilution for green areas is the same. It's 18 inches per year. The dilution factor for pavement is 40 inches per year in both the existing and proposed.
Right.
But what does change, just like the wastewater flow is changing, maybe there's the amount of lawn area changes, so that's going to affect the load. The amount of pavement or driveway surface and parking surface is going to change, and that's going to affect the calculations. So they juggle, I mean, they vary from existing conditions to proposed conditions.
Right.
But overall, when we get to the bottom line, that's how we go from a concentration of 20.7 milligrams per liter in the existing condition to 12.4 milligrams per liter in the proposed condition.
But as you said, the majority is really going to be waste.
Sewage.
Right. Okay. Now, what struck me is I was over there today looking around, and there were just two very nice cars there, and it was empty.
Right.
So I'm concerned about the calculations about what's going on there year-round and since of the volume. How was it determined it's 5,600 a day?
Well, it's...
For how many days a year? In summer, it's busy there, probably, but for all the other months, let's say 9 months of the year, is there any wastewater coming out of the place?
Well, you really end up having to compare, and this is done, all of it, you have to compare apples to apples, and the only way to compare apples to apples is using the Title V sewage flow. That could be a going motor lodge, motel here in town with an on-site restaurant and any number of things. It's too variable to know. So the only thing we can do to equalize it is use the sewage design flow. That's how it, in my experience, how it is always done. We have to compare design flow to design flow, just so you able to make a one-to-one comparison to it.
I understand. You understand what I'm saying, though?
I do.
Is the volume maybe minuscule compared to what it will be? I'm comparing a site that I just saw, what it looks like, compared to what, a new site would be.
Right.
I mean, drastically different. That's all. And looking at how much nitrogen is going to be produced, maybe more nitrogen that'll go into the land right now.
Right, and by the same measure, we do, all the calculations are done on design flow. My experience is, even at full capacity, even these units at full capacity, the average daily flow is going to be somewheres around. The DEP would say, if you have an actual use and you meter the water usage, you double it for the to get to your design flow. So they're saying the average use is about 50%. My experience, and I've been at this for quite a while, all of the ones where we've sort of looked at what's the actual water usage versus what is the design flow, it's about 60%. Average flow is about 60%, not 50%. So again, take these loads that I'm forecasting, and I think in the actuality, they're going to be about 60% of what these calculated flows are for sewage nitrogen.
And these are you're referring to commercial sites, not
for houses or it really doesn't matter. I mean, I know, a lot of people live in, say, a 3-bedroom house, and they just aren't. And when you design a septic system for a house, it's 2 people per bedroom. You got 3 bedrooms. You got 6 people living in the house. There's an awful lot of houses that are 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. I live in a 4-bedroom house. It's my wife and I.
Right.
And that's it. So the actual flow is significantly less than design flow. So
The other thing, a practical thing I'll mention, is that the motel is going to be sold and demolished, and so I know that they have kind of stopped, let's say, taking in new people at a certain point. So I don't know the details of it, and I would assume there's some seasonal variation there, there's no question about it, but it's probably, there's probably fewer people there now than there would have been any October 21st in any of the past 20 years.
Right.
If I could just, when you asked about other facilities where wastewater systems were put in, and Bruce mentioned Simpkins School, and I did examine that file so I knew how to prepare this, and I met with Bruce a couple of times, and we talked. So I do know that they put in a wastewater system there that is designed to treat to 19 milligrams per liter. It's a different system, but the technology, the actual manufacturer of the system is not so important as what is the level of treatment that's being provided. They are treating, they designed a system there to treat to 19 milligrams per liter, and that's what the Board of Health approved. It may not have been this board, but at the time, of course, it was going from a school to a housing, and the flow was increasing substantially. But their comparison was they were that was approved, and there was, I believe, an 11% reduction in nitrogen load. That's what they showed. This is 24% reduction over existing conditions. Not that it struck me, but I felt that we were at least doing what they had done, but I think we were doing a significantly more substantial reduction in nitrogen.
Bruce, were the surface water standards met at the down gradient for the Simpson project?
Cannot recall.
I didn't, and I looked at that file. I didn't even see that was discussed in any of the paperwork that was submitted by the engineer there. And they would be in Swan Pond, Swan River watershed, maybe.
Bass River, I think it's
Maybe
still
Bass
falls
River,
from-
yeah.
So this board had granted variances for that? I mean, I don't, at some
Yes.
point when this went,
Yeah.
okay,
Right here.
yeah, I don't think any
That
of
went
us.
through the Cape Cod, Commission first. They received approval there, then came to us.
Yeah, and I think the other one you mentioned was the Cavalier. Oh, that's the one I was thinking of, Cavalier. They went through, they were in a full-blown groundwater discharge permit, right, for theirs?
Yes.
Yeah,
That-
because that was a large flow. There were over 10,000, I believe.
And they
I
might have
think
cut
it's-
that back. Their project got reduced as they were going through, but I think they already received their treatment plant approval, and they just
Right,
seemed to go forward with that.
yeah, that's a big expense on a treatment plant.
I'll jump back in, Mr. Chair.
Anytime.
On measuring it, if this system goes through, standards of testing, we briefly talked about what it would be quarterly testing for nitrogen for the first period.
Yeah, so with a fast system, they actually operate it. That's one of their requirements. They operate it for 2 years. And I did speak to them. They would conduct quarterly visits, and that's what they're proposing on the 19
Visits, but what
milligrams.
about testing of the nitrogen? Just to see if it's meeting their standard of what
Yeah, they were quarterly visits and quarterly, because the quarterly visits and quarterly testing
testing
is what they
for
were.
nitrogen, total nitrogen, TKN, or total nitrogen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, they didn't say, I mean, we operate wastewater treatment plants also. We have a division of Coastal Engineering that operates
Yeah.
wastewater systems. We would test effluent, BOD, TSS, nitrate, nitrogen, total nitrogen is what we would propose that we're testing for. We'd also do an influent sample too, so that we know what the incoming BOD, TSS, and ammonia, nitrogen is. That's how we would.
Right, so that's how you would do it. I know we briefly talked on this, but would that be part of this first 2-year quarterly testing for those criteria?
Yes, it should be, absolutely.
And then after 2 years, it could, if it's working, be reduced to twice a year?
I think if you're looking to make sure you're hitting the 19, I think you're at quarterly, you can, I think you would need to, an operator can't just show up there twice a year and expect, I mean, there's things change.
Oh,
So,
for quarterly testing, hopefully it's not going to be too many years before you tie into sewers.
Right.
So there is a cost to that, I understand, but
Right.
if you're not. going
quarterly is
online-
not,
Pardon?
quarterly testing is not onerous. I mean, these visits are not that long at the site to do that.
Okay. How often does the plant operator on site? Is that once a week, on this type of plant?
When they're operating it, they come quarterly, that's it, unless they get an alarm and they have to come for some event.
It's pretty much works by itself without somebody there more often?
More or less, yeah. It's, unless, again, I mean, these systems have alarms, so if there's a pump or something that's not operating properly, a call goes to the operator, and an operator responds and finds out what the issue is.
So prior to a building permit being issued, obviously we have to approve the septic plan, but we would also need to see when it has a alternative system such as this MicroFast, that we have a copy of the 2-year contract, and within that contract, it specifies the testing period, quarterly testing of the criteria you just mentioned.
Yes, it would specify what's being tested, and it has to be operated by a grade 4 wastewater treatment plant,
Right.
licensed wastewater treatment plant operator.
So you'd be relaying that information to them to provide to us?
And they do that routinely in Massachusetts, so they know what the requirements are.
You would also be providing a as-built or septic certification. The system was installed according to plan?
Yes, we would.
And does that include the MicroFast? Do they do their own certification, or do you include that?
Well, we would certify that the system was installed in accordance with the plans, the approved plans.
Okay.
And they will have to, the technology company has to provide a letter as well.
A letter as well, okay. That's some extra oversight that we would see the system being installed according to what they're specking out. And I guess one of my last questions is when the town sewers go by in front of 28, I know you've made the statement that you're going to have the pipe available to hook up. I think board should consider when that would be, because I know sometimes we're talking about maybe a 5-year grace period, but in this particular case, because the board's granting a variance, that you might want to say it's within 1 or 2 years once the pipe goes through.
Well, if there's no sewage to hook up to.
No, once the sewer pipe goes
Oh.
on 28.
Well, my understanding from reading this is they're going to do it immediately. No?
Well, the pipe will be out to the edge of the property.
Right.
So it's just a matter of the little distance from the edge of the property to
So
where
you would-
the
you
pipe
would-
will be.
Actually, I think they will, when they come by, they will connect, because they're going to run from the sewer main. The practice is that contractor that's laying the sewer main runs the stub out to the property line for the property owner to connect to. In this case, the property owner's pipe is already going to be there, so they'll connect at that time. Of course, when the sewer goes by, and even if they connect to it, we can't flip the switch and start discharging because it's not going to have anywhere for it to go. But there'll be it can be a gate valve there such that it's connected at, really pretty much at the time the sewer goes by.
That's your point. So
Yeah.
then that would be either immediately or within
Right.
1 year.
Yeah, as soon as the
Yeah.
plant is able to accept the flow, it'll be connected, and then we can just turn the valve and start discharging to the municipal system.
I think we all need to keep in mind, we talked about the sewer line going by. It's nice that the website kind of states in 2025, we're going to be sewering here in town. Question is, how realistic is that? I mean, some plans have been voted down here, at least one major vote. I can tell you with the DY school system, it's been years, we're just fighting over the school budget
Right.
with one town.
Right.
And we're talking about a fraction of money versus sewering. And it's also three towns that are going to have to get their act together here, right? It's be Dennis, Harwich, and us. For that to happen in 4 years, I personally don't think it's very realistic. So it's just something for people to keep in mind, so.
No, and again, I just was trying to present best available
It'd be
information.
fabulous.
We don't know how long it's, what, as you say, any number of things can happen. and
People
affect
don't
that.
know, they're not even giving out what it's going to cost for you as a homeowner to hook up to the sewer line.
Right.
Many people live here on fixed incomes, and to get $8,000 together to hook up is not realistic. It's the people who don't have $400 extra to repair something in their homes. It's the town we live in.
In my opinion, there is no more an ideal place for a municipal sewer than Route 28 in Yarmouth.
Absolutely.
It just makes sense,
We need it. We've needed it a long time.
right?
Will there be an on-site manager for these rental units?
Yes.
Okay. That on-site manager be living there?
No, the on-site, we will have an on-site manager who's there 5 days a week. We'll have maintenance staff that are also there periodically. We'll have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergency service, just in case there's any emergency at the property.
So if somebody has a issue, the heat's not working, or a backed up water unit or a closet or a toilet, they would have an emergency number to call
Yeah.
versus calling the health department saying, I'm having an issue.
Yes.
We do have our housing inspector in the back, so I mean, he would be getting the calls, but all 72 units will be registered with the health department, so as rental units.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are actually 40 rental units, 72
40.
bedrooms.
Yeah,
Mhm.
40.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
When you're looking at the sewage output of the present place, okay, how is that affected, or how is it affected the fact that there's cesspools there that are from whatever decade they went in, versus, and a part of it is treated by a 20-year-old Title V system? How does that affect how you come up with these numbers of what's there presently? Does that I
That
don't
does not
understand that.
affect the calculations. The calculations are based strictly
Irrelevant
on
system.
sewage design flow and it does not have anything to do with the systems that are serving, the rooms at the Motor Lodge. But the purpose of talking about what exists there now is they are not meeting for health and sanitation. They don't meet the required groundwater separation that is required by present code of 5 feet for these sandy soils.
Yes,
3 feet at best, and probably
under.
less than that or in the groundwater for the cesspools.
Do you have a copy of, I guess, the sewage discharge permits health regulation document?
You know, I don't have it I don't think if it's not in this binder, I don't have it, but I'm somewhat familiar with it.
Right. I
Any number
just-
of times.
I think we'd benefit, or at least I would, to understand what's been presented and what has not been. And that may be to Bruce's office and not just the Board of Health. On page 2, which is, I guess,
Thank you, Bruce.
going in your direction right now, right up on top, there's currently approved input variables include, and their list of 6 items there. I know the last one, number 6, sewage flows is determined by Title V design flows. That we certainly have. That's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure I understand the first 5 of what's been provided for us or we need to review according to town regulations. I just need an explanation.
Yes, so this regulation, which I think was adopted back in the late 80s, really before we had the MEP studies and everything else to go by. I mean, this was really sort of on the cutting edge of watching what's going in the groundwater. It was one of the, I mean, at least in my experience, was one of the first towns that was dealing with it. And I think Wright Pierce was the engineer for the town at the time. They're a large engineering company out of Maine. And we did a number of projects in town. Obviously, we dealt with this, as I mentioned, when we did the Stop and Shop project in the early 90s, 91. This regulation was pretty fresh. So this was sort of best available methodology. It was a methodology that I believe Wright Pierce came up with and recommended to the town, and that's how this regulation got adopted. That's my recollection. Bruce knows cold, I'm sure, exactly what happened. So this says how you do a hydrogeologic evaluation. That's what this criteria is. So when you're making those assessments. And it's talking about inputs that you would put into a groundwater model to determine what are the impacts on the down gradient receptors. Since then, Cape Cod Commission came along. They developed their nitrogen loading technical bulletin, sort of deviates off of this process, but I think it gives the town a method by which everyone is, or not just the town, but whenever a project is being evaluated, the inputs that were developed by the Cape Cod Commission, make sure that various consultants aren't using different loads for different things. It sort of makes sure you have a uniform standard of inputs. So I think we did not do a hydrogeologic evaluation and modeling with these standards. We went back to the Cape Cod Commission technical bulletin. I don't think when Simpkins School was done, I don't believe this modeling was done for that variance application as well. I just think that again, we're talking a regulation now that's 30 years old, and I think the methodology maybe has changed a little bit, but only because of circumstances. I'm sort of connecting the dots on what I think has happened over the years. So we did not, in asking for this variance, we're also, we're asking for variance from the process as well as the end results as well. We did not do a full-blown hydrogeologic evaluation on this property. But again, I think it's because information has evolved and with the Cape Cod Commission methodology, I think we're providing sound information based on what the Cape Cod Commission has developed in terms of what is the concentrations in the groundwater.
I think you can appreciate the situation we're in right now. We're looking at a 30-year-old regulation is what we're looking at here. I don't know when's the last time I looked at it, but yeah, it's 1989 here. As what we're looking at for, I guess, our responsibility is maintaining people following regulations. That's all, and that's all we have. And I don't think we have any information that wasn't provided in the packet about the commission in the sense of learning what requirements or what really goes on when designing systems.
Right.
That's not something we know that very well. We don't.
I understand.
As a board. I spent a lot of time reading the regulation, and it's not really very helpful, I guess.
Right.
I'm finding that a little bit, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I look at this, I mean, as always, we get down to the variance section, we talk about what's the variance criteria and when can this board grant a variance?
Right.
And as is not unusual, two conditions, enforcement thereof would do manifest injustice, and the applicant must prove that the Board of Health that the installation of the system or systems will not have a significant adverse effect on the public or private drinking water resources, lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, or any other body of water. And I think to that criteria, I would suggest that this application demonstrates that we will have a significant improvement to the protection of the down gradient receptors over existing conditions. And we're trying to indicate that along manifest injustice, this is a 100% affordable housing development. The cost to put in a wastewater treatment system that could meet the criteria of this regulation is substantial, $750,000 over and above what's already being proposed, plus $75,000 or thereabouts per year of operation cost. And I don't know if that would tank the project, but I suspect it would pretty much.
Well, if we had another $75,000 in expenses, that would cut the amount of mortgage I could afford by probably $1.5 million. So we'd have over $2 million shortfall. So that would be a huge problem.
Again, we have an existing condition. This is a substantial improvement over what exists there today. And so for that reason, we're asking the board to grant the variances that are necessary to allow the project to go forward as proposed and put in a treatment system.
So even though it's an older regulation, which was cutting edge at the time, it's still a good guideline to look at a project and say, you know, what are you doing? How does it relate today? And let's look at your variances that you're requesting. I think it's reasonable. I mean, it would be maybe a little bit more difficult to redo it to today's standards because you're trying to look at a big picture item, which this is kind of looking at the big picture and telling us, what are you going to do? Is it going to improve the water quality over existing on the property? So I think it's a good first step for the board to take a look at a project.
I mean, I agree with Bruce. I think at the time, this was best available measure for the board to be able to evaluate some projects, but I think we've gotten other resources now that allow us to do it in a different manner. So.
Most of the variances that come before us are really dealing with the actual property issues with that, as opposed to a financial one. What's feasible? In other words, it usually involves
setbacks.
Setbacks, yeah. That's what it comes down to usually. It's location of the house, where the driveway is, where the neighbor's line is, whatever. That's generally what we see. So I don't know if we've had one before that is largely based upon the feasibility of the business plan. I'm just thinking out loud a little bit. You think about affordable housing is an issue. Would we consider this differently than if it was not for affordable housing or not? That's a tricky one. That's
I
something to think
believe
about.
that-
I'm dwelling on.
I believe the hardship is financial or otherwise, and I understand. Normally, it's someone is, might have some space limitations. They can't meet a 10-foot setback to a property line, or they can't meet a, well, I mean, normally that would be if it's usually the horizontal separation, getting a vertical separation or something like that, sometimes it is a financial hardship. Maybe we've got to put in a containment wall all around this, and it's going to be a 4-foot high sticking up above ground, and we just don't have the finances to do that in a pump system and any number of things. I mean, I agree. I mean, I've done a substantial number of variance applications across the Cape, and most of the time, it is a space needs thing, or we need to put in less leaching area. But there are times when it is a financial burden that is just untenable. Again, I mean, we are proposing a system that meets all of the setbacks and separation and is providing treatment, and it is providing a substantial reduction in nitrogen loading. It's just that it does need some waiver of the full measure of the regulation to allow the project to go forward.
Can I ask you a question, Bruce?
Yes.
Sure.
I just got the drift that they get a different regulation for affordable housing than we do for this?
Same regulation.
Oh, okay, so what's the problem? I don't understand, I'm confused, because he just said it'd be different for affordable housing.
No, I'm just thinking in decision-making here, is that something we should be considering in any way? Should we, if this was not for affordable housing, would we think any differently about it? If this were a set of things.
Still the same amount of water going there, so it doesn't make any difference. To me,
That's
I don't
absolutely
understand that.
true. The financing might be a little different. So the financial hardship, I think, is probably more intense for an affordable housing development than it would be for a market rate
I understand
development,
that,
let's say
but they're still getting
condos.
the same amount of water,
That's absolutely correct.
so I
And
don't
the same
see where the
regulation.
difference would be.
Mhm.
Some other comments, questions?
I have a question for Bruce. Have there been or any other board members, have there been projects similar to this that have applied for variances who have been able to meet the 5 milligram per liter of nitrogen discharge requirement?
We're just starting to see redevelopment of the town now.
Yep.
As I mentioned, you really don't see anything. When sewers come through, we'll see a lot more redevelopment. But for projects to redevelopment now, they either have to put in large septic treatment facilities or a smaller facility, because this is not as a large redevelopment, because it's only going to be 40 units, a smaller system. So. But even the larger ones, they don't come really down to 5 parts per million, as the engineer mentioned. The state only issues a permit down to 10. Mm-hmm. So even though our regulation says you need to get lower, the state will not issue anything lower than 10 parts per million on nitrogen. So even the larger plants only get down to 10.
I think we probably need to take a look at this regulation.
I don't think there's any other towns, you might know, Dave, that has a similar updated regulation from this one. I think there's a couple towns using this similar regulation that we have. I'm not aware of anything new.
Chatham used to have a very similar, because they had the same consulting engineer
right.
going back into the 80s.
Might only be one or two
But I'm not even
towns
sure
that
that's
have it.
still on the
Most of
book
them
anymore.
do not have it. I think Chatham borrowed this regulation from us and maybe one other town. It could be looked at, obviously.
I think it's an improvement.
I can make a couple suggestions. I heard what the board mentioned, if the board wants to, consider, going forward with some possible conditions. I can make a note, then they can provide them to us. And I mentioned earlier that you were going to do a report mentioning what the down gradient would be to Lewis Bay, that you thought would be, without doing a full hydrological study, you could do assumptions to see how close we did get down to that 0.75.
Sure.
I think that was one thing that you could submit. 2 would be outlining and specifying the quarterly testing of the nitrogen and what you mentioned, total nitrogen, BOD, TSS testing, influent, and effluent. You could just spell that out. Clarifying engineer certification of the septic system. Microfast would certify their own installation of their system.
Yes.
And then lastly, connection of to town sewers when the plant becomes operational. I don't know if that has to be a time frame, but just it would have to be connected within
Right. That's,
2-3 months or something, I don't know, 6 months.
yeah, I don't think that's the big issue, obviously,
Right.
as long as it's whatever the window would be. So
So if we need to have this information back from the engineer saying, let's see how close it does meet the regulation of the impact to Lewis Bay, if we need, the board wants to look at that, that would continue it to the next meeting.
Where else do you have to go with this? What,
This is it.
this is it?
We're done after, with this approval. The other boards have approved the
And
project.
when did you plan to start work on this project?
We will start the demolition, I think, early, maybe in January, and the construction probably later in the first quarter.
When would you be filing for a building permit, you?
Probably in December.
December. So they could come to our next meeting to give an update of this information.
might be helpful.
The board doesn't have to vote on it right now. They can just have this information presented and vote on it at your next meeting. Or you can ask for other information.
I can't think of any more information. Anyone else? It's
Well, if we, I mean, the only thing to me that we don't know about is the calculation for the downgrading to Lewis Bay. And it might be that if you set a condition that if the calculation gets it to 0.75 or below, then we might not need to come back. And we give you the other information as a, you know, the quarterly testing is really something that we would commit to. Even if it got to the point where Microfast didn't usually do those tests, we would commit to do those tests. And provided, again, the clarification of the certifications and the commitment on the town sewer connection. But anyway, that's just my comment.
Do you want to comment on that, Dave?
I think that's a pretty good suggestion if we can bring into to you, Bruce, and do the calculations, and if we meet the 0.75, then it
Think
meets the
you're
regulation.
going to meet it, or you're going to be close to it? I guess that's the, if we need that little,
Yeah,
Well, if we're close to it, we come back.
versus the other side, if you're not applying for a building permit for 2 months, that does gives us a couple weeks to hear it
Yeah.
at the meeting again, also to
Yep.
feel a little bit more comfortable with it.
I mean, I think, I know we would need to keep the hearing open, we'd have to continue to a date certain, because otherwise then we're re-notifying all the abutters
Right,
again
no, we'd just,
by certified mail.
right, no, we don't want to do that. We would just continue the meeting, and the board's next meeting of the 2 dates are November 4th, which is the first Monday. We have nothing else scheduled on the agenda, so that would be the earliest. We would be in this hearing room, but November 5th, Tuesday, is election day, so election is set up on the second half of the hearing room with the dividers, so we would not be on TV or audio, so
Standing room only. for
standing
crowd.
room only. People at home would have to come here and just not sit home, and they'd have to get the live action. If not, it goes to the 18th, but the 4th is available.
Fourth is open, yeah.
I mean, we might have a couple other minor things, but that would be 2 weeks from today. I think that's what, is that 2
That's
weeks?
fine with me.
I'm not sure I can make it, but
But I think I
Yeah.
can,
Yeah,
Jim can't make it
No.
probably, or maybe not be able to make it, but I'm certainly available.
yeah, yeah. You'll know the answer ahead of time, Jim. At least Dave's answer ahead of time.
So,
Continue to the November 4th?
well,
Ask the board?
we need a vote on that, I think.
Just before,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just before you go, I know there's some abutters here, and I don't know
Oh,
if you wanted
oh,
to.
great, thank you.
Whatever, before you continue it.
People have been sitting there, yeah.
Come right up to the-
Absolutely, come on up, just,
To the podium?
if you'd like to say something, yeah, that's great. Always like to have people, just introduce yourself for the,
I'm Dave Self. I about the backside of that property. For,
Okay.
I don't know how many feet, but quite a few.
Sure.
I've been there since 1947, so I've been around for a little while. I really would like to see this project go through. I'm really tired of that motel that's sitting over there right now. It's really an eyesore, and believe me, the noise factor is pretty good right now, and I can only see an improvement here. I would hate to see him get financially not be able to do this. So I think this board should approve these guys pretty quick. It's been holed up now for a little while. Cavalier seemed to go through awful quick. I don't know how that happened, but it seemed to move along a lot faster than this one did. I don't know why that was. I went to John Simpkins School. That's enormous over there. So, anyways, it's. I think the flow is to Lewis Bay. Lewis Bay or Lewis Pond. I'm not sure what you meant on that, but I don't know. I would really like to see this move ahead. It's I've lived there for a long time. I'm not going anywhere. So it's okay. That's it. Thanks.
it's
Thank
great you come in.
Coming
and-
in.
Okay, thank you. So, anyone have any other questions? If not, make a motion, how do you want to proceed here? We have it's a lot of information, so anyone want to move ahead with something?
I think that the only outstanding question is the water standards at the down gradient Lewis Bay. And it seems to me we could make a motion right now regarding the approval or disapproval of the variance and condition it on that particular number coming into Bruce, rather than kind of,
Yeah.
carrying it out longer.
With that specific number? Or-
Well,
or-
.75, there was some discussion back and forth about Bruce saying, well, how much of a fudge factor are we giving here? How much leeway? So I guess I'd defer to you, Bruce, on that one. I mean, if it comes back,
Before I throw out a number, Dave, would you have a,
I don't even have,
I mean, we'll have that number, we can then decide to have a meeting on the 4th? I mean,
But if it came in at
if you need a number.
.9 or
tonight-
something instead, or .95, would that be reasonable to issue the permit without coming back to the board? It's not coming back at like 2.5, you know,
No,
no. But if it was just,
I think if it's under 1,
yes. Dave?
Okay, let's
That-
do that. Are we gonna continue anyway, to hold the date?
Well-
So
well,
that-
we're,
No, the
that's
motion
what we're
was to
discussing now.
All right.
We're discussing making a motion.
Yeah.
I see.
We're creating one, we're not stating it yet.
Thinking about it, yes.
That's all we're trying to do, being careful. I mean, that's reasonable.
Can I just ask, like, how these numbers are determined here?
Dave? Yes.
Sure. So we've talked about, and what you have in your packet, we know what the nitrogen loading is, what the nitrogen loading is at the property.
Yeah.
So then, that nitrogen is going to get down into the groundwater lens.
Yeah.
And so the groundwater lens is, if it's not confined, I mean, it's very thick. I mean, the bedrock is hundreds of feet below ground surface here on the Cape. But I think we would look at some representative, the aquifer thickness maybe is a couple hundred feet thick. We obviously wouldn't say we're getting mixing in the full 200 feet of aquifer thickness, would pick some number. I mean, it is going to mix and dilute and spread as it moves towards Lewis Bay and Nantucket Sound. So we would look at making a reasonable judgment on what is the thickness of aquifer that we're going to assume there's going to be some mixing on, and then it carrying, and that is based on that thickness, a reasonable rate of flow, how much dilution of the nitrogen is actually going to occur, so that we can then do the calculation.
I think I misspoke. I was more curious about how the town determines what would be acceptable levels at the down gradients. Is like, you know, in other words, if we're going to discuss granting the variance based on a specific level, I mean, 1 milligram per liter or 1 part per million doesn't mean much to me. I don't know what happens if the nitrogen level is greater or less than a certain value. That's insignificant to me. I don't know anything about
Yeah, that's a great question. Like on the drinking water part, where it said at the, early in the regulation, it has to meet 5 parts per million, the drinking water level standard is 10 parts per million. So it's like a little safety factor in here. For the nitrogen, it's 0.75 as a safety factor, and I can't recall right offhand, because each embayment has its different nitrogen load. So I think that was just a safety factor was put in there. I don't know if there's, phosphorus has a certain loading over 300 feet, but offhand, I can't recall of a certain nitrogen standard.
Again, I don't think that the town had the advantage of maybe the information that they would have
Right.
today so it was, I guess it's something that the town's engineer
Looked at back then.
sort of looked
Right.
at back then and came up with their best judgment as to
Right.
what it needed to be.
Okay.
But
No, it's a good question.
that's a great question, actually.
It's a great question.
It should feel good, right? Have a good question.
Well, there are no bad questions, right?
Okay. Someone want to go ahead? We can move this along.
I move that we approve the application for variance from the Town of Yarmouth Sewer Discharge Permits Health Regulation submitted by Coastal Engineering Company on behalf of Commonwealth Community Developers, LLC.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. Are you taking this down? Good. Sorry, Mary.
Okay. Based on the following conditions,
Listen to the tape, too.
Okay.
That's good.
that there be a report submitted to Bruce that shows the best estimate of the surface water standards that will be met at the down gradient Lewis Bay by the project, and that it be at least less than 1 milligram per liter of nitrogen.
Yes.
Secondly, that Microfast, after the 2 years of quarterly visits and testing specified in the contract, there continue to be quarterly testing until the hookup is established at the proposed sewer in the town. That the as-built, the customary as-built be submitted clarifying the engineering certification. That the letter regarding the technological aspects be submitted by Microfast certifying their installation. That the testing will spell out the type of testing will be spelled out. In other words, the total nitrogen, the BOD, the effluent. I might have missed something.
No.
Okay. And that there be connection to the town sewer as soon as the regional plant is operative.
So give it with time, months or whatever.
We're going to approve the variance for a certain amount of time?
Yeah.
Yes. So how long is this project going to take? You're
No,
gonna
there's the
s-
hookup, you mean?
No,
Just
the hookup is
Hookup.
going to, they can't do anything about that. They're
No,
going
but
to have
it-
the line there.
But when day comes by, how much window of time that they need to hook up, that's all, to make sure they don't wait 6 years, that, you know.
They said the
some-
sewer operator was going to be hooking up because they were going to have the pipe right there.
And they can't hook up till the plant becomes
Right? Yeah.
operational.
I mean, they can't,
6 months after the plant becomes operational?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's fair.
wow. Why would it take that long?
Everybody's trying to hook up at once.
Oh, because you might not be allowed to? Or what?
We wouldn't be allowed, well, we certainly, I think just because there is probably, there may be a rush on those things. I think 6 months sounds like a reasonable
Absolutely,
period.
at least 6 months.
Okay, 6 months.
6 months, if not more.
Okay. Did I get everything?
Yes, you
I
did.
think so.
Could I just
notes.
ask one question? I mean, we've designed this for a micro-fast. I did speak to the local rep for micro-fast as late as today. They're suggesting we look at another, there's a number of treatment systems that are out there, a Septitech system. Can in the variance, I mean, the important thing is, no matter what the technology is, we would be treating to 19 milligrams per liter. Would the board consider, or would you consider the motion saying, not necessarily naming microfast certification, but the technology
Right.
vendor provide the certification letter so that if there's a change there, that it's not tied to a specific technology?
Technology vendor rather than Microfast.
Fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
We're talking about the same equipment, so.
Yes, yeah, everything would be
Okay.
the same, it'd just be
Yeah.
supplied by a different vendor,
Right.
Different vendor, different,
possibly.
it's
yeah.
they're all proprietary technologies.
Right.
So if you did get a different vendor, you would just have to resubmit your Cape Cod Commission calculations into us so we could see that it still met 19 parts per million?
It'll still be, we're treating to 19. We're
Right.
not, that would not change.
Correct.
We'd be treating to 19, it just would be
Correct.
perhaps Septitech instead of microfast, that's all.
Okay, the motion's been made. We need a second to,
Second?
okay, so we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, see there none. So all in favor of granting this variance, just raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous then. Okay, so the motion passes.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your focus on this.
okay.
So you'll be getting that calculation to Bruce pretty quickly?
Yes,
8 o'clock?
absolutely.
8 o'clock or so? Thank you.
That late?
Okay, Bruce, you'll pass that on to us? I appreciate it. Just email it.
Yeah.
What you
Want any
get.
of your plans back?
Sure.
Sure.
If you're going to throw them away, we'll do something with them or recycle
I got a
them
wood
ourselves.
stove that eats everything.
I'm gonna go have a chicken pot pie.
Will you just sign that sheet so I make sure names are spelled correctly?
Sure.
Thank you.
Boy.
Great.
Mr. Murphy, are you ready to move along?
As soon as they make the room table available.
Okay, so let's move ahead. We're up to the fourth item on the agenda, and it's discussion, decision on single-use plastic bottle plan. It says citizen petition, October 29th, 2019 town meeting.
Okay.
And I see there's someone here. I appreciate your patience. You've been sitting there quite some time. Hopefully you're interested in the subject.
I was, actually. I found it quite interesting.
Okay, it's good to hear. So just introduce yourself.
My name is Sheila Place. I'm a resident of Yarmouthport. I've lived here a little over a year and a half. So I got very used to how things worked in Barnstable, so some of this is new to me. So thank you for hearing our petition. I'm a stand-in for Amanda Murphy, who could not be here tonight, so bear with me. I see our PowerPoint over there. I'm not sure what I do with it.
Yeah, he'll be right back. He'll get that going for you. But in the meantime, you want to just give a little overview of your committee
Yes.
and what it entails?
I'm guessing you have, because we met
Yes.
with Bruce a couple weeks ago, you have some material there.
Yes.
So we have an amended bylaw. It was presented in the spring, and it was determined that the best thing to do was to hold this and to do some more work supporting it, essentially. In that, we learned that the prudent thing would be to delay implementation a year. The original implementation date was going to be 2020. Now it'll be 2021. Additionally, what we learned was that the school purchasing is combined with Dennis, and Dennis has already approved this through their recycling committee. It goes to town meeting the same night as ours, but it's been approved through their recycling committee, and the purchasing committee would like purchasing to happen for both towns. So that would move the date of implementation for the schools to 2022. The other change in the bylaw is that the effective date would be September 15th, 2021, to keep it in line with purchasing for beaches and golf courses and things like that. So those changes were made, and I think they've been important changes and well-received changes. So just yesterday, I got a memo from Carol Ewing, who co-chairs the recycling committee, and they are approving this amendment going forward. We met with the Finance Committee a week or so ago and got I think, a positive reception. They're going to vote on it this week. We're hoping and anticipating that it will be positive. So, do you have questions? Should we look at the slides? Or?
What's in the record? This would be no on town property, no You want to just kind of go over what that would be?
Right, on town property, which does include offices, beaches, golf courses, et cetera. We know this is achievable. There are plenty of options. There's water in cans, water in cardboard. The other big area is festivals. And it's interesting to note that the Oyster Fest this weekend, which you know is huge, is plastic-free, thanks to Sustainable Practices, which is the organization I'm representing. Ed McManus, who runs the Cranberry Festival, ditto, he is going to have it be plastic-free. So taking even a step further than this. I think the objective is that this moves beyond town purchasing departments and that we get to the point where we start to realize the concerns about microplastics in our food. I just got an article off the internet yesterday from Healthline, and it quotes a number of other sources about how much plastic we're actually eating. But the thing that struck me for this conversation, people who rely on bottled water might be ingesting 90,000 more microplastic particles per year on average than those who drink only tap water. I was quite struck by that. So I see Eric has a reusable bottle there. I didn't bring mine tonight, but I always use it because I've been involved in this project for a year and a half or so, and I have become absolutely convinced that drinking out of plastic bottles is one of the worst things. We get enough of it other ways. We get it when we wash our clothes. We get it when we breathe the air, when we eat the fish. I mean, the evidence is really getting to be pretty convincing. So I think the town can be leaders in this. I know that there have been some concerns raised about the kids are never going to do it. They're still going to bring their plastic water bottles that they'll buy in wherever. I think that is a fair statement, but I think the job of towns is to provide leadership and encouragement to do the right thing. And I think particularly the Board of Health on this issue has an important job. So
the town vending machines would not be selling plastic water bottles. We'd probably just have maybe canned water bottles.
yes, so people
at
will be
town facilities.
encouraged to
Pardon?
bring their own.
Yes.
So we know, I won't get into the costs unless you want me to. We know what the costs are. We know where these water refill stations have to go. We are committed to seeking funding sources outside the town. We don't want this to be a burden for the taxpayer. We understand that's a real issue in the town of Yarmouth. Actually, Madhavi Venkatesan, who is the leader of Sustainable Practices, has been approached by a company called TAP, and they will put 2 free stations somewhere, probably in our office space somewhere, with the requirement that they can have advertising on it, and that has been approved by the town where it needs to be. So there's also potential savings. We know that single-stream recycling used to cost us $55 a ton before China started to refuse to take our recycling. Now the charge is $120 a ton. Obviously, not all of that is plastic water bottles, but some percentage of it is. That cost is just going to go up because there's no place. That's the other problem. There's no place for this stuff to go. Recycling, we did a good job of selling recycling. It's not the answer anymore, unfortunately. We've got to unsell recycling. So a bottle like Eric has, I had somebody at the dump say to me that they carry bacteria. I've been using one for quite a while now. It hasn't made me sick. You wash it, same thing with reusable bags. You throw them in the washing machine. So there's answers to these questions.
You also have a flyer that you'll be passing out before town meeting or different?
Yes.
I think you've been to the library already.
We've done presentations at 2 libraries. Amanda has done those. We have been passing those out. We are going to be passing more of them out before town meeting. My email address is on them, so where they have been passed out, I haven't received a single email, so that means people aren't reading them or they've got other things on their mind.
There's also a mailing that came out on this.
Yes, a postcard.
Postcard.
Yes, yes. Other towns that have done this are Wellfleet, Harwich, Orleans, and Chatham per bylaws. And per town policies, Provincetown and Eastham, so that's 6. And then it'll be on town meeting this fall in Falmouth, Sandwich, Dennis, Yarmouth, and Brewster. So we have also, this is important. Over the past year, we've met with Jeff Colby, DPW, Dick Court, Facilities Director and Superintendent of Parks and Cemeteries, Town Administrator Dan Knappich, Pat Armstrong, Bruce Murphy, Finance Committee and Recycling Committee. So there's only 3 of us, but I think we've done our homework. So, questions? Shall we cruise through the presentation?
Let's go, right?
How are you going to present it at town meeting?
Amanda will be presenting it. She presented it at town meeting in the spring. I think she will go through what we have done since to strengthen the ban and the outreach that we've done and the approvals that we have had from RASWAC and we hope to have from Finance and the Board of Health. So, I mean, she will be presenting.
Personally, I feel, I was at the town meeting, and I feel as if it wasn't clear to everybody present that the ban was only on town property or at town events. I think some people just heard a ban and they felt it was townwide, everywhere, not just starting with what you're talking about starting. So I would just like to make sure that she makes that clear from the very beginning. And I liked your point about the students, because that young woman that spoke was heartbreaking.
Wasn't she?
Yes. So I think that's important, too, to emphasize that, yes, there will be people, including young people, that won't like it, but we are the adults in the room, and we need to model this kind of behavior because it's really their world that is going to be most affected by what's happening.
And we're hearing that from a lot of young people, right?
Yes, well, yes.
Yes.
Lately, yes, the young people have been speaking.
I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Can I ask you who's going to pick up the tab on enforcement?
Bruce thinks it may come his way.
You know, if you're gonna have the ban, you're gonna make it a bylaw, and you're gonna need enforcement.
But you're talking about town departments
Yes,
complying.
yes.
We're not talking about people, individual people
Yeah,
complying.
but if it's on town property,
But town departments complying,
We're vendors as well.
or vendors, yes, but it's a town department that's going to contract with a vendor. So, I mean, it's not just the public, really. The public can bring their plastic bottles anywhere they want. But at town events and on town properties, there won't be plastic bottles available for sale or for distribution. Right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's a good point. There is no enforcement section within this proposed bylaw, but the proposed bylaw would be a town bylaw enforced by the Board of Selectmen, who is the chief procurement officer. So they would probably make sure all the contracts go out, follow this, their vote.
That is correct, yeah. So I think enforcement for this ban is pretty minimal. But I think it's like the plastic bag ban, which I worked on in Barnstable. Yeah, enforcement was much more of an issue, as it probably was here, too.
So it would really be that we have a festival and one of the vendors comes in with their truck and is selling bottled water or whatever they're selling. That would be the only thing, because I guess monitoring town buildings and the vending machines is pretty straightforward. That's not going to be a problem. So that would be the only case where someone needs to enforce the regulation. Okay. Some other questions?
Go to the
Videotape?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's something like 30 slides, but some of them are pretty quick, and it really reinforces what we're talking about. Sure, go ahead, thank you. This is Amanda being cute. Go ahead, next slide. But these are some of the costs. Look at the cost of marine litter. I mean, we pay for plastic one way or another, and there are an awful lot of hidden costs. If you look at the cost of, and it may be on another slide, I looked at these today. Yeah, next slide, please. Well, that's just horrific, but that's what a lot of the world looks like right now. And what we send to recycling is getting baled, and it's sitting in pallets, waiting for some market to open up for it. Next slide, please. That's a wave of plastic coming at us, and that's pretty accurate because the fish are showing up very, very full of it. Next slide, please. This is genius, plain old stupid water in plastic bottles. Okay. And that's 90% of seabirds. I've heard an estimate up to 95%. And the cost, the long-term cost of the environment, because this stuff doesn't biodegrade. It photodegrades into smaller and smaller particles, which the birds eat, the fish eat, and ultimately we eat. Okay, thank you. This breaks my heart because it's a whale with 65 pounds of plastic trash in his gut. And I don't like to see shocking slides, but sometimes nothing makes the point quite like that. And some of these animals are dying really tragic, painful deaths. Okay. Yeah, there you see what's going to happen by 2050. Thank you. And that's basically what that bird's having and we're probably having. I like this slide. I've been using it for a while. There's no such thing as away. When we throw anything away, it must go somewhere. I think it's an important thing to think about. And just making the point, China recycling is not the answer. All this stuff must pay for it to get rid of. And the point I made, it's being warehoused. It's incinerated or it's in landfills, and there's toxic output from that. Methane from landfills, which is a greenhouse gas. Some toxins released from incineration. Next slide, please. To me, that's frightening. I'm old enough to remember when there wasn't any plastic. Now it's everywhere. You can't get away from it. You buy anything new, it's in plastic. I'm doing everything I can to reduce plastic, and it's difficult. It's really hard. Next slide, please. This is kind of interesting. It's pretty amazing that our society has reached a point where the effort necessary to extract oil from the ground, ship it to a refinery, turn it into plastic, shape it appropriately, truck it to a store, buy it and bring it home, is considered to be less effort than what it is to just wash the spoon when you're done with it. This is on Independence Park Drive. I hadn't noticed it till Amanda put this in the slide. So we show that to people who go down in Independence Park every day. We abuse land because
Sign it on the state border in Maine.
we regard it as a commodity belonging to us.
Same sign.
When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. That's Aldo Leopold, who by many is considered the father of environmentalism. Next slide, please. So this is pretty interesting stuff. 3 times the amount of water to make one water bottle, or enough oil to take 1 million cars a year off the road. some of these you've already seen on other slides. 40% of bottled water is tap water. I think it's probably higher than that.
Yep.
And that, another important point there, it's not guaranteed to be tested. Our water, which, by the way, I moved from Barnstable, I think the water in Yarmouth tastes better. I don't know if it, I'm sure it's to the same standards, and we all know there's emerging contaminants that we have to start paying attention to, but it tastes better. I'm quite satisfied with it. Go to the next slide, please. This is pretty amazing. 17 million barrels of oil are used each year to produce all the plastic bottles consumed around the globe. 50 billion. That's an awful lot of oil for something that we don't need.
And can't get rid of.
Sorry?
And can't get rid of.
That's absolutely right. $10 a gallon. If you went to the gas, well, and that may happen someday, but if you go to the gas station, gas is $10 a gallon, you're not going to be happy, and yet some of us cheerfully pay for it for a bottle of water. It's 10,000 times the cost of tap water. That's 10,000 times. That's amazing. Poorly tested and regulated, more stringent testing, reporting for local water, often tap water, and there's the 64%. I thought it was higher than 40. Chemicals can leach from plastic bottles. A lot of people reuse the plastic water bottles. That's a bad practice because they're designed to be single use, and plastic can be leaching into that with subsequent uses. Nestle and other multi-million-dollar companies have been the devil's marketing workshop here. They are actually owning water in parts of the world that are underserved by municipal. So what to do? That's what we're here to talk about. No, and I like this. I'm no longer accepting the things I can't change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. Why are you here? Well, I know why I'm here. I'm here to try to convince you that the plastic water bottle ban at the municipal level is a good idea. Say no to plastic bottles. The EU will ban single-use plastics by 2021. If they can do it, we can too. And there's some other solutions. I'm hearing Asia is the source of the problem. Well, they're ahead of us in doing things like this. And, the beer packagers have gotten on board with not marine wildlife threatening plastic rings. And Concord, Mass. was the first town to ban bottled water in 2013, and that was a town-wide ban. And the person who orchestrated that ban was a little old lady like me, so we're pretty persistent. And there's the message. BYOB, meaning something other than what we've come to think of it as. Okay. There's a couple of examples, kind of like what Eric has. I have one of those home. I bought a Hydro Flask just because it was on sale someplace, and my 16-year-old grandson said, "Oh, Nana, that's really cool." All of a sudden, I was cool. There's examples of the boxed water. Mm-hmm. And the Boucan, which there is probably right now, not probably, there is some increased cost, but as these bans spread, that cost is going to come down. And cans are 70% recyclable. I also like this. Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want. I happen to believe that's very true. We don't just vote at town meeting and in general elections, but we vote when we buy something. So We think this is an environmental, public health, and economic issue, so we're going to be asking people to vote yes, understanding that there's a couple of other important things on the docket that night. Okay. I think that might be it. One more, I think. And that's our logo. Thank you very much. Anything else?
So what do you wish the town does next after this? So let's be optimistic in that this passes. What should the town be doing next?
What a good question. Nobody's asked us that. I think getting rid beyond municipal level, obviously, is the next step. If we really want to get rid of this stuff. It's sort of started to disturb me so much, I go and Stop and Shop, and I see 2 aisles, nothing with plastic bottles. You know, and I think the way to do that, I can't speak to the process here because I was in Barnstable at the time, but we actually went to Stop and Shop. The minister of the church where I go to dressed up in a plastic bag outfit, and we handed out reusable bags that Stop and Shop gave us. So I think we can take this beyond the town level if we engage the stores. That was successful with bags, and I think it can be with bottles too. I think if people understand the risks, the potential, the threat to their health, I would think they'd embrace this. And I think we're seeing, I see more and more people with their own bottles. So I think the convincing will get easier. There are going to be people who are going to resist, like the gentleman at the dump transfer station when we were collecting signatures, who thought this was a bad idea because of bacteria and the bag's the same thing. We're going to run into people like that, but I think they're going to be. Some of them can be convinced. Some of them will never be convinced.
I have a question. Who owns the vending machines in the town buildings? And do they, I mean, somebody owns them and they come and stock them, right? And do they have sufficient alternatives to plastic-based products? They're available?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen canned water.
I hadn't seen it till about 6 months ago.
Great.
But and that's, I think, an important point. The suppliers recognize this is coming, so they're getting out in front of it.
So sustainable practices, you're just focusing on plastic bottles?
Right now,
But polystyrene and
Recycle committee.
yeah, the recycling committee's
working on that,
going to
I
do
know.
that, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're kind of eliminating these one by one.
Right.
And none of this is going into effect until 2021?
That's correct. And the reason for that, one of the people we've spent a lot of time with has been Pat Armstrong. And the reason for that is the contracts, the purchasing cycle. We wanted it in 2020, but when it became clear that that was too aggressive because of when the contracts are up, that we would have to postpone. If we could do it sooner,
Right.
then we would.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So can we make a motion and endorse
As
this?
support, yeah, okay.
I make a motion that the Board of Health support the single-use plastic bottle ban on town property here in Yarmouth.
We have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, and discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your effort.
Well, I
Thank
didn't.
you.
I wasn't going to be here tonight, so I may not have been the sharpest presenter.
You did very well.
Great.
Thank you very much. You want me to sign this?
Yes.
Yes, please.
That's just for the minutes, so we know who was here. That's all that's for.
I'm happy to do so. So affiliation, sustainable practices.
And Eric, this really does look like metal. They do a nice job, don't they?
Thank you again. I'm grateful for your support. Thank you, Bruce.
Okay. Okay, let's march along here a little bit. Okay, we have an update on annual flu shot clinic. Mr. Murphy, are you taking this, or am I?
Oh, go ahead, you're doing very well
I'm
tonight.
just looking for a handout.
Oh.
Here's one. Okay, thank you. Okay, so flu shot clinics, it's by appointment only. I'm just
Yes.
reading the flyer here a little bit. 18 years of age and older. When? Oh, well, it's Friday, November 1st, 2019. How do you make an appointment? You call 508-398-2231, extension 1241. Let's say it one more time. In order to make an appointment to get your flu shot, you would call 508-398-2231, extension 1241. And location is the St. Pius X Church Parish Life Center. And that's located at Barber Street, which is off of Station Ave in South Yarmouth. Time is from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And here's something good. It's free with most medical insurance plans and those with Medicare Part B. There's an asterisk saying that those 65 years of age or older are eligible for high-dose vaccine. And what else? You need to bring a photo ID and insurance cards. There is some more information at the bottom, basically saying persons who should not be vaccinated. According to this, persons who have an allergy to eggs or egg products. Second, is persons who are ill and have a fever should delay vaccination until the fever and other temporary symptoms are gone. Third is persons who were ever paralyzed by Guillain-Barré syndrome. And last is anyone who has had a past reaction to the flu vaccine. That's pretty vague, actually, the last one. So I'm not sure how to address that. It's not uncommon for someone to have a mild reaction to a flu vaccine. You can get a mild reaction. That's not unusual. You get soreness in your arm. There are a number of things. But if people have questions, they certainly can contact their health provider about going and making an appointment here. Certainly there are other places that you get flu shots. You can go to your medical provider. We can all go to some of the pharmacies as well, are providing them. Mr. Murphy, anything else we need to add to that?
That was very good. We get quite a few people calling for appointments right now. We're probably, would you say, Christine, up about 100 so far? So there's still quite a few slots available, and just give us a call, and look forward to seeing everybody.
Okay. Okay, we're on to approval of the minutes. We have two sets that were in your packets. Hopefully everyone reviewed it. The first was from August 19th, 2019. Did anyone have any corrections? Any changes? Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion here to approve the minutes then for the 19th of August?
I move that we approve the minutes for the August 19th, 2019 Board of Health minutes.
Is there a second? Someone?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, discussions? There's none, so please raise your hand and say aye if you're accepting the minutes as written.
Aye.
We do, aye, okay, that's good. I want to do another set, okay? Let's go to September. September 16th minutes, 2019. Once again, is there any comments, corrections, changes, deletions? Okay, pretty straightforward. Anyone want to make a motion? Sure.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from September 16th, 2019.
Okay, somebody?
Second.
Very good. Discussion, none. All in favor? Accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Charlie, was that an aye? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes,
aye.
great. Okay, good. Unanimous. The minutes passed. Nice job, Christine. They look great. They really did. A lot of details there. Okay, old and new business. Director Murphy, do you want to start that off?
Yeah, just an update to the board on the Hyannis Yacht Club that earlier came to the Board of Health. There was a question of who was going to be also in the backside of the units they were going in.
Yep.
Next day, I just called the owner of the building, told him we wanted to know, could we get in there? He said, sure. I said, who's in there? He said, the rehab place was in there, and no problem. And I'm thinking, boy, this is pretty easy. That it was so difficult at the meeting to see if we could get in there. And he was very helpful, very pleasant. He said, call the technology, Spinal Tech Technology, which I did. Talked to the CFO there. That was also very cooperative. We set up an appointment, went there the next week, and it was all dry storage for their Spinal Tech units. They did have one bay that had some of their cleaning components, work components, and they said they would reduce that to items they didn't necessarily need. We then walked over to their Spinal Tech facility, which is a really large facility where they make the braces, and spent a good amount of time over there and looked at that, and we'll probably be licensing that separately. So everything went very well, very easily, very well. We forwarded Kyle forwarded the information from the board to the Board of Appeals, which accepted the Board of Health recommendation, except the last one of compliance with building and fire departments, that they thought they should leave that to the individual departments, which is fine with us. So that's just a two-page update from Kyle on that, but it went very easy.
So do we have to vote, in other words, for the full recommendation? So we did not vote on number 8,
Right.
The recommendations that Mr. Lawson had made.
Right.
So what do we have to do tonight in order to send something to the zoning board?
It's already been to the zoning board, so we're done.
But what about that
Oh.
regulation? I just want to get an understanding about number 8. I mean, that's what we asked for and the information you received.
Yeah, so we wanted compliance before they got in there. So before they get occupancy, they will have to go to each individual departments anyway.
Okay.
So at that time, each individual department will make their own comment. And I think that was the point the attorney was making, is that they would still go to each individual departments at a point in time. And we were trying to say, we just wanted to know ahead of time what potentially could have been in the units,
Okay.
which we found out, which was all very fine.
It's pretty easy to do.
Pretty easy.
Thanks for doing that. Just on the letter from Carl, October 15th letter, the only question I had is about the back page there. It's talking about storage, about 10-gallon licensing threshold, yet under 20 gallons. So what's there now, or what are they reducing it to?
They were close to the criteria of 20 gallons. They basically just had some cleaning components, some sprays they put on some of the forms and so forth. But they said because they have some product that comes in and out, they just said, because we know we're going to be close to that 20, we don't want you to come up here and we're at 24 or 25. They just said, we'll take a license. They have a burn containment area. They would be in compliance, so they just wanted to play it safe.
Okay. What else? Old new business.
Things are going well. Everything we're kind of still going straight forward with. Septic is still, people at the end of the year now making their last rush to get septic systems in, so we're still doing perk tests and septic installations. As I mentioned earlier, the next Board of Health meeting, we have 2 dates of the first Monday of November 4th and then the 18th. We do have elections on the 5th, so we'd only be able to use half the room. Hopefully we don't have anything pending, that there are recommendations coming in, as the board made a recommendation to, so hopefully they're going to come in with compliance. So I would say if they come in compliance, because the room will be, being set up, that we just move to the 18th. If they need to come to the Board of Health, we would go to the 4th, but I think the engineer felt comfortable with that, so I'd make a note to the board the 18th.
Anybody?
I can't make it on the 4th.
Okay.
Just
So, I guess the question, yeah,
I'm
what's
sorry.
up?
So, old business, any information on whether we can
Oh,
ban?
just want to make sure, sorry,
Oh, sorry.
about the date. So what do you guys want to do? In sense of, do you want to have 2 meetings, you want to have 1 meeting, what date?
I don't want a meeting on the 4th if there's nothing on the agenda.
Okay,
So the
Charlie?
18th is fine. with me.
18th?
18th, fine, okay. Okay,
Okay. Any word on whether we can ban the sale of Roundup?
We did Kyle did a small preliminary look research. It looked like Warwick, Massachusetts did some banning of Roundup and controlling of geese back in 17, but we haven't gone all the way through it. The problem, we just don't have the time right now with being down one person. We kind of don't have time to do a full back research. So, I mean, it's kind of on the back burner if maybe
I
a
just thought
board member might
The
want to.
attorney might be able to say yay or nay.
Oh, haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
But we did do at least something, but it's just a matter of getting it to the town attorney, phrasing the questions, doing a limited research for him. We just haven't had the chance yet.
Right, okay.
There
How
was
about
an
your
issue-
replacement? of Amy?
We have advertised. The advertisements were extended from last 18th to the 28th to get some candidates. We have 9 candidates, I want to say. So a couple up here that hopefully will work out. So we'll know better, but we probably won't have anybody on board and in the seat and probably to the end of the year. In the meantime, we've used that extra money that without that position, Amy being here, we've been able to extend the summer housing intern to work with Kevin another 4 months, and that's helped us considerably, both of them and Christine that helps with the housing, do housing inspections. Doing an inspections and get out there is also allowed the person to look at certain neighborhoods of where rentals are that we might not have. We've had a few separate projects that we're able to give her to do that, so that's helped. She's been on vacation for a few weeks. We'll be back, so Kevin's enjoyed that. The assistants, they've been able to get through some of the larger housing complexes pretty quick, which we needed, and get inspections out. We still can't keep up with inspections. We're looking at now bringing it to the budget cycle attention that we would like a year-round assistant housing inspector, so we're trying to work on that now to get that in the budget cycle. We've mentioned that before, between the current money that we have come in from the registrations and then the short-term rental money that's coming in from the state. We need to mention to the town that some of that state short-term rental money should come into the rental program, which we've mentioned before, and we mentioned in the wastewater when they were here and included it in the minutes. So that's what we're trying to work on right now.
Did you hear back from Comcast? They were going to give us some information about vehicle washing. So won't you?
Can't remember. Cows, I know they were working on the balusters that were going up and the location they were doing.
Yeah.
I don't remember Kyle working. I'm sure he was working on that. I just an update on that.
What was the issue there with the washing specifically? I don't recall.
How they were washing the vehicles, I think he had they were washing the trucks by just driving up on a top, making a up on the sides, washing and then scooping it off afterwards, which was fine. And I don't know if they were planning to continue that or just wash off site.
Okay. Anything else that's new or old?
No, we're good.
I just want to mention, I'm sure everyone's been keeping track of the vaping issue. And
Yes.
Governor Baker
Boy,
has to do an emergency regulation.
Boy, things go so quick. We've been coming by that. Yes, the emergency order came through on a Tuesday night. We received it Wednesday. We visited the stores, all the 31 tobacco stores that we had in town on Wednesday, Thursday, and they were all in compliance. Several of them had taken it off their shelves Tuesday night after the order was issued. Several of the chain stores that got that right through corporate, whether that was Cumberland Farms or 7-Eleven, they took care of it right away. But every one of our stores was 100% in compliance. One store still had it and said, I just wanted to clarify, and I knew you'd be around today, Bruce, and if that's in fact what it is, they took it off as we were there. So no questions. I mean, there was no debate back and forth. We went into the one tobacco, mainly strictly tobacco store by the across from the water park, used to be next to Christmas Tree, and they had already removed theirs and had taken it off-site, as a matter of fact.
Well, the judge did rule that it has to be an emergency regulation rather than the way it was banned by Governor Baker,
So
That came out today.
Yes.
Yes, I didn't hear yet.
Yeah, it's 10 days to do what? I mean,
I guess
the
to
governor.
reformulate it as an emergency regulation.
So nothing that was specific in it. It was just what it's
Well,
being called.
I also heard that it would not apply to nicotine, but only to THC. You know, I think that
Really?
There's-
That changes this drastically.
it does, and it's not, I don't think it's based on evidence, because I haven't seen CDC come up with any definitive
Right.
answer. And the latest thing that I'd read was about, which is what Dr. Spillane had talked about as being one of his fears, was the heat that it takes to burn up these liquids, or heat them up to vaporize, and the lungs of many of these folks have been burned. So it's not just a chemical liquid itself, per se, that's causing it, but it just seems to me that people are rushing to conclusions about, they want to know what it is, and I understand that, because the people that sell these products, their livelihood depends on the income that they get from selling them. But, and also, I assume the people that use them would like to know, too, so that they can make an
point,
informed
yeah.
decision about whether or not they should continue. But I don't think that we don't have the answer yet about what's causing it, the problems.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? If not, we can maybe make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the adjournment? Say aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone.